America had seen protests before. It had seen anger, grief, and outrage spill onto its streets many times in history. But the summer of 2020 felt different. It wasn't just loud, it was relentless. It wasn't just emotional, it was global. When George Floyd's final moments were captured on camera, something inside the country fractured in plain sight. Within days, cities across the United States transformed. Minneapolis, New York, Los Angeles, Atlanta, Washington, D.C., streets that once echoed with traffic now echoed with chants. No justice, no peace. Protesters came from every background, every age group, every race. Some marched in silence. Others screamed through tears. All carried the same message: accountability. Phones were everywhere. Every movement, every confrontation, every quiet moment of unity was recorded. America wasn't just protesting, it was documenting itself. In Washington, D.C., tension hung thick in the air. Federal buildings stood guarded. Law enforcement agencies were deployed to maintain order as crowds swelled by the hour. Among them were FBI agents, trained not for public protests but for precision, restraint, and command. Their mission was clear: prevent chaos. But chaos doesn't always look like violence. Sometimes it looks like pain. As protesters knelt in the street, fists raised and voices trembling, something unexpected happened. A small group of FBI agents stepped forward. Cameras focused. The crowd paused. Then, one by one, the agents lowered themselves onto one knee. The image was instant history. For a brief moment, the shouting stopped. Protesters stared in disbelief. Some cried. Some clapped. Some simply recorded. That single gesture, silent, wordless, spread faster than any speech ever could. Within minutes, the photo was online. Within hours, it was everywhere. Some called it powerful. Others called it dangerous. Supporters said it showed humanity inside the system. Critics said it blurred professional lines. News anchors debated it. Comment sections exploded. Hashtags formed overnight. But on the ground, in that exact moment, something rare had happened. Tension dissolved into stillness. That stillness wouldn't last. What looked like unity to millions would soon become controversy to those in power. And the cost of that single knee would follow those agents for years. America had begun a conversation it couldn't pause, and it was only getting louder. 5 years passed, but the image never faded. It lived in archives, documentaries, and debates. For the FBI agents who knelt that day, life moved forward, until it didn't. In 2025, the decision came down quietly. No cameras. No headlines at first. 12 FBI agents were terminated. The reason was simple on paper: violation of conduct. The reality was far more complex. They were told their kneeling was interpreted as political expression while in uniform. That it crossed boundaries. That it undermined neutrality. To the agents, the explanation felt hollow. Their intention had never been political, it had been practical. De-escalation. Safety. Control through calm. When the firings became public, the story reignited. Former agents stepped into the spotlight they never asked for. They filed a federal lawsuit, arguing wrongful termination and violation of constitutional rights. They weren't demanding sympathy. They were demanding clarity. The courtroom became the new battlefield. Support poured in from civil rights advocates, former law enforcement officers, and everyday Americans who saw the kneeling not as protest, but as restraint. Critics pushed back just as hard, insisting law enforcement must remain visibly neutral at all times. Cable news recycled the old footage. Social media split into familiar sides. Once again, America argued with itself. Outside federal courthouses, crowds gathered. Some carried signs supporting the agents. Others demanded stricter enforcement of conduct rules. The irony was impossible to ignore. People were protesting the punishment of those who once tried to prevent protests from turning violent. The lawsuit raised uncomfortable questions. Can empathy exist inside institutions built on authority? Is neutrality the absence of emotion, or the control of it? And who decides where that line is drawn? The agents remained mostly silent. Their lawyers spoke for them. But their faces, captured walking into courtrooms, sitting side by side, told a deeper story. These weren't activists. They were professionals who made a split-second decision in a historic moment. And that decision changed everything. While the nation focused on their case, another video surfaced, one that reminded America why the protests began in the first place. Jacksonville, Florida. Early evening. Traffic moving as usual. A black man behind the wheel, unaware that his night was about to be rewritten by someone else's camera. The stop began like thousands before it. Flashing lights. A pulled-over car. An officer approaching the window. But within seconds the tone shifted. Voices rose. Orders escalated. Confusion filled the space between authority and fear. Then the glass shattered. A bystander instinctively raised a phone. What the camera captured was raw and impossible to ignore. Officers forcefully pulled the man from his vehicle. Commands overlapped. Strikes followed. The video shook viewers not because it was new, but because it was familiar. Within hours, the footage was viral. The man's name spread alongside the clip. Civil rights attorneys stepped in. The NAACP demanded answers. Protesters returned to the streets, this time with his face on posters. America watched the same pattern unfold again. Supporters of the officers cited procedure. Supporters of the man cited humanity. Experts replayed the footage frame by frame. Commentators argued over tone, timing, compliance. But for many viewers, the conclusion was immediate. This was another moment that should never have happened. Press conferences followed. Investigations were announced. Promises were made. And still, the questions lingered. Why does accountability always arrive after viral exposure? Why does justice require an audience? The video didn't just document violence, it documented distrust. A relationship between communities and institutions strained to its breaking point. And as protests reignited, the earlier image of kneeling agents resurfaced again. Two moments, years apart, connected by the same unresolved struggle. By 2025, America was no longer asking whether change was needed. It was asking why it was taking so long. Lawmakers debated reforms with urgency sharpened by public pressure. Body cameras. Use of force policies. Protest response training. Oversight committees. The conversations were no longer theoretical, they were demanded. Communities held town halls instead of marches. Former officers spoke openly. Activists pushed for systemic solutions, not symbolic gestures. Social media kept everything visible, refusing to let stories disappear. The fired FBI agent's case moved slowly through the courts, a reminder that justice is rarely fast. The Jacksonville investigation continued under national scrutiny. Each update sparked renewed debate. But something had shifted. People weren't just reacting anymore, they were connecting patterns. They saw how a knee meant to calm a crowd became a career-ending act. They saw how a routine stop turned into another viral trauma. They understood that these weren't isolated incidents, they were chapters in the same story. A story about power. A story about perception. A story about accountability. Justice, America was learning, isn't only delivered by verdicts. It's shaped by memory. By documentation. By people refusing to look away. As the sun rose over city streets once filled with chants, protest signs leaned quietly against walls. The noise had softened, but the demand remained. Because justice doesn't end when the cameras turn off. It begins there.